Hello and welcome to the 160th of a second photography podcast. As it's coming to the end of the year, I'm going to be doing more of a review of some of my older episodes. I think I've now done 140 episodes, which is quite a lot and certainly more than I ever thought I'd be doing, and I still intend to continue to do more episodes. So one of my very first episodes was with John, and it was talking about getting on Instagram and being successful on Instagram. And I have started on Instagram, and then because of the pandemic I stopped. So I'll just recap my Instagram. So for ages I didn't have an Instagram. I really didn't see the point of it. And then a lot later, particularly after the episode with John, I decided I'd do an Instagram account just for my street photography work. And I was publishing every day. And then when it got to the pandemic started and I wasn't doing any street photography, I thought I don't really want to be looking backwards at what was. I don't think I should just put up historic images. And I just stopped. I just put up a post that said I'm stopping type thing. So I do have an Instagram. So I'll probably mention in this episode that I don't have an Instagram, but I do have an Instagram now. But I'm not using it because of the pandemic. So I thought of this episode when I checked out my Instagram and looked at pictures and stuff. I thought, I have done an episode detailing all the stuff on Instagram. So without much further ado, please sit back and listen to one of my very first episodes, episode 2, titled Getting on Instagram with John. Thank you. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the 160th of a second podcast. Although I'm just going to start calling it 160th of a second. I'm going to drop the 1. It's becoming a mouthful. So hello and welcome. My name's Gareth, and joining me in this podcast today is my guest John. Do you want to introduce yourself, John?
I'm what I would classify as a semi-professional photographer, in that I do earn money from the photography, but not on a full-time basis. I actually have another job, which is an IT consultancy. I've been doing photography for about 7 years now, with model photography in particular, the last 3 to 4 years. That's a bit about it, really.
Now, today's topic is going to be, I'm just going to call it getting on Instagram, because I don't have an Instagram account. I've never really got into Instagram. I don't have a Twitter account. I have the Facebook account, but that's it. But I do want to get a Instagram account for the podcast, because while people are going to listen in their cars and listen to this, we're talking about photography, and it's going to be really quite interesting and crucial in a way to show some images. And I do feel now that Instagram is really the way for that rather than a website. Today we're going to be talking about Instagram, and before we start, I just want to say that I'm not the complete authority on photography, and I would never regard myself as that. I do it as a hobby, and I enjoy podcasting and talking about it. You will hear my thoughts and opinions only, but please don't take those for advice or the opinions of an expert. Please do what you think is best. And I'm sure John would agree with me. Would you agree with me, John, about that?
Absolutely. I never claim to be an expert on anything. If you do that in life, you'll only set yourself up for a fall later on.
Exactly. So, do you have an Instagram account, John, and do you use it?
I do, and I really do use it. I actually did hold off on having an Instagram account initially because of copyright concerns. Mainly, and this was actually before it actually combined with, I think Facebook took them over. There was a court case about some chap that had taken photos off Instagram and just put something underneath them, and then claimed they were his. And actually, I can't remember the chap's name, but he actually won his court case. He actually did, apparently the court case went in favour for him. So that did actually concern me. But as a vehicle for just getting your photos out there, or even videos, because they actually do videos as well, but mainly photos, I actually loved it. I really do. I do a lot of model photography, but my main non-model type stuff goes out on Instagram. I do put model stuff out there occasionally, but it is more my iPhone snaps or abstract photographs that I take that go out on Instagram, and I absolutely love it. But I mean, going back to the copyright side of things, I always make sure I've got a watermark on them. It doesn't protect you at all, really, because people can take it off. And they strip the metadata out of photos certainly on Facebook. I'm not sure about Instagram. Shall I explain what metadata is?
I think we'll come back to that, because I'm interested in we're going to talk generally now, what you put on your Instagram and the sort of ethos of it. Because to me, the ethos of Instagram is using your smartphone and sort of sharing pictures you've taken on your smartphone when you're out and about, things that interest you. You can use Instagram to really push your photography or push your agenda, whether it's promoting yourself or a dress or whatever. And you can sort of use your DSLR and get it on Instagram. So I was really interested when you were talking about the photos you put on, which you've said are different to what you put on your normal portfolio. So do you use just your smartphone for that?
It predominantly is my smartphone, yes. It's not always. I mean, sometimes I take a little bit of a weird abstract sort of thing on my DSLR and think, oh, actually, that probably will fit with the rest of what I've got on there. So I put that through. But 90%, even probably 95% of it is actually smartphone based, and it's because I just love in fact I love the freedom of being able to just take a picture and within minutes have it uploaded and it's been there, it's actually out in the world, and it's kind of a thrill. It's quite nice.
And do you get instant feedback on that? Do people like, comment, and do other things instantly?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, in a way, it's quite rewarding, but it's like anything in the social media. Everyone sort of feeds off the feedback almost. It seems a bit of a weird way of phrasing it, but it's like you put something out there and you just almost everyone wants the attention to a greater or lesser degree. I mean, I am not a narcissist or egotist by any means, but it's nice to have people recognize stuff.
I think it's very encouraging, isn't it, when you put something on a website or social media and it gets a lot of interest. You think, oh, that's good, I'm going to keep going. Whereas if no one looked at it, you might sort of give up, really.
That's very true. That's very true. It is positive feedback. I mean, I'm a very sort of positive person anyway, but I mean, generally, apart from trolling, which is negative feedback, apart from that, which is very, very rare in my case anyway, it's all positive, and I love positive feedback, and it's sort of, when you're really doing something well when you get a lot of positive feedback. So it sort of really eggs you on, and it keeps the momentum going. It's a great thing.
Shall we talk about that metadata? Because I also thought that Instagram stripped out metadata along with Facebook. So for those of you who are unsure about that, when you take a picture in your camera, it can write your name. You can set it to write your name. And when you export things from editing software like Lightroom, it will have things like the camera you shot it with, the shoot speed, was a flash used, the aperture, and you can have other things added like Lightroom tags. And in Flickr, if you go onto an image in Flickr, you can see what's the shooting conditions someone used to take that image, which I think is quite useful. Everything gets stripped out on Facebook, definitely, and I think everything gets stripped out on Instagram, although I'm not an expert on that.
I certainly know that Facebook does it. I suspect, seeing as Instagram is now in bed with Facebook, that they do something similar. But I don't know for a fact. I really don't. The other thing is, in the metadata, certainly with smartphones, is the location.
Yes.
Which actually can be... It can be useful that it strips it out, but then on Instagram and Facebook, what you do is most people say, well, I'll say this again. The first thing they do is say where they are anyway.
or some things my friends do on Facebook, which I think, oh, you shouldn't do that, is they do a countdown to their holiday, and then they do posts from their holiday.
Yep.
And if I was a burglar, I'd be friends with everyone on Facebook, because it's just so obvious when people are away. But yeah, you're right. It can be quite good to strip out data for location. Yeah. But I think there was a bit of a scandal with Instagram, because I think when you uploaded your images, it was all unencrypted. I think that got spotted. I think that's been rectified now. Is there anything else you want to say about metadata? You pointed out the usefulness of having it stripped out. Any disadvantages to having that metadata taken away?
I don't think there are any advantages other than making the file very slightly smaller, and it really doesn't make that much difference to the size of the file.
It will be negligible, won't it?
I mean, going back to the Flickr thing, though, I do like the fact that the metadata does come through. If say you're going back, not necessarily smartphones, but DSLR, and you got your DSLR, and you think, well, I'd like this lens, like a Sigma 50mm art. Okay, so what you do is you go onto Flickr, and there are searches you can do to actually see photos that were taken with that lens. Now that's incredibly useful, as a tool. So that's a real major positive for the metadata being there.
And that's actually something I've done. I've looked on Flickr for a lens I'm interested in to sort of see what you can achieve with that lens, and that is really useful. So you're right there. Probably doesn't have too much of a use on Instagram.
No, absolutely not. We digress.
Well, that's the point of a podcast, isn't it? To digress and really talk about what you're interested in. Let's talk about filters and editing your images prior to uploading to Instagram. Do you do that?
Right, okay. So I use Hipstamatic on iPhone, which actually, as part of its way of working, actually applies the filter as you shoot it. In the later version of Hipstamatic, you can change the filters afterwards. The early version didn't. It actually applied filter at the time you took it, and that was what you got, which actually was quite thrilling, because you take a photo and that's the filter you've got, then that's what you're living with. It made it a little bit more, it forced creativity a little bit more, shall I say. But now you can recover from it. The later versions, you can apply the filters afterwards. And also then there are various filters and various applications, including Instagram, the Instagram application itself. Sometimes I actually do apply Instagram filters themselves, but very rarely. It's only if I need to give something a little bit of a boost. But I'd rather keep filtering outside of Instagram, so that I've actually got a true master copy of the file.
I've often thought that filters can be used to sort of dress up a bad photo. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's true. I totally agree. But they also can also be used to enhance something or make some. In a way, you could say it's a bad photo, but sometimes the filter can make a photo. Well, actually, I'll rephrase it. Sometimes a filter can make a photo. You see what I did there?
One thing that put me off really was I have several cameras where they connect your smartphone via a Wi-Fi network they set up. So my Micro Four Thirds camera, I can take an image in RAW, and then I can push it to my smartphone as a JPEG. That has its uses. It's certainly really good for putting things on Facebook. I've fallen into that trap of I like to edit RAW images. And until recently, I couldn't do that on my phone. I have an iPhone, and they've recently, probably within the last year, allowed RAW editing. So now I can get RAW editing on my smartphone. And I've actually, in preparation for using Instagram, bought a SD card adapter. So I can take an image on one of my cameras in RAW, and I can put it on my iPhone. And I've got the RAW image in my iPhone that I can edit. I probably can't do too much more than I could do with a JPEG, but it does leave me a lot of options. So I am looking to start editing images and putting them up on Instagram, but I'm not going to be using a DSLR. I'm going to be using a lighter camera, so I might be using a Fuji, or I might be using a mirrorless Micro Four Thirds, because I just feel to use a DSLR all the time for Instagram goes against the ethos of it. What do you think?
I'm not one that's actually wrapped up in using a certain type of camera for any purpose, if that makes sense. If you think that keeps your enthusiasm going by having that sort of limitation, like a creative limitation, then that's fine. Essentially, it was probably supposed to be just mobile phones when they first started it up, but I don't think it matters what you upload on it, really. At all.
The best camera you have, and someone else has said this, I'm never going to take credit for this, the best camera you have is the one that's with you at the moment, isn't it, when you take that picture? But I do feel my iPhone is a bit lacking compared to my actual camera in many things, like bokeh, isolating the subject, just the colours you can get. I don't have the iPhone 7. I'll be looking to use a lightweight camera. Plus, I've got a few specialist lenses like extreme wide angle, macro, and some other ones. So really what I want to be using Instagram for with this podcast is showing the pictures I've taken, and the pictures I would normally take will be with a camera rather than a smartphone. So that's the route I'm going to go down. Do you have any tips for Instagram?
Well, I mean, there are actually. I mean, I discovered recently, although it's a little bit flaky, there are actually applications that you can use on your desktop to upload photos onto Instagram.
Can't you get into Instagram trouble with that? I was reading somewhere that you can get something called a shadow ban. Have you come across that term?
No, not at all.
I think a shadow ban, and again, I'm really glad I did the disclaimer of I'm not an expert, because I'm really not an expert on this, but I think a shadow ban is where your picture's up but people can't search for it or people can't see it. If I've got that wrong, please leave a comment within reason. And I think you're more at risk at getting that if you use the website uploader. But that's
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's really something I don't know a great deal about, and I'm just recalling from an article I remember reading some time ago.
Well, the only from my perspective, it was just the sheer convenience of being able to do it, really, more than anything else. The only downside to anything like that is that you have to give your account details away.
Yes.
Which is incredibly scary. And it's anyone using the things like any of these applications where you get more followers or get more loves or likes, any of those, it's incredibly dangerous because you basically hand over your account to do it.
Mm.
So I would try and avoid those. That's probably one of my tips.
Yeah, that's certainly a good tip. Don't do anything that gives away your personal information or hand your Instagram account to anyone else.
Yeah,
definitely. Do you think it's good to get sort of a low angle, or do you think it's good to try and stand out from the Instagram crowd? Do you have any tips on using hashtags and getting your work noticed?
To start off with, I didn't hashtag much. My youngest daughter has a phrase, I think it's just called, it says, you're a hashtag whore, Dad. Because I gradually acquired more and more hashtags, and the younger generation seem to think that it's actually very needy to do that kind of thing. But actually, as I pointed out to her, the whole point behind hashtags were to make things searchable. That's what it was all about originally. So yes, I do tend to hashtag. I try to do it contextually. So if it's street photography, then I put hashtag street photography and that kind of stuff. If it's a travel one, I just put hashtag travel. I usually make sure people know it's an iPhone or not an iPhone. I even put my name in there, which is interesting because that's not narcissistic. I didn't think it was, but it actually came in handy. I found people that had been copying stuff off Flickr and very kindly putting them on Instagram and putting my hashtag off my Flickr account. I was thinking, well, I don't know how I feel about that, but at least those good people did use my hashtag. It's very kind of them. So hashtag. Yeah, hashtags are handy in that respect, I suppose. So
people are actually publishing on your behalf from your Flickr account?
Yes, indeed.
I have taking
a lot. I have that a lot, actually, in various... I've had stuff put on Facebook and people basically just copy the photo and just put my name against it. It just happened quite a lot.
I do find that odd, though. It's like people don't trust you to publicise your own work and feel they must do it for you. That's very odd.
In a way. Yeah, but the only thing is, for every person that's kind enough to do it, actually use your hashtag, there's got to be hundreds that don't, I actually did come across one of my photos without any hashtag once on Instagram. What do you do? How far can you go with it? Because effectively, when you put something out there, it's almost gone. Anyone can use it. Someone once said, "Thank you for you've just given me a desktop image." And I'm thinking, well, thank you, but I actually worked to produce that photo.
But yeah, you put things out on the web and social media to be seen. For people to look at, for people to enjoy. You can't be too unhappy when they do enjoy it, maybe enjoy it a bit too far, but yeah, you can't be too unhappy.
Absolutely.
If they start using it. That's why you put it out there.
Exactly. It's a double-edged sword, really. People think that everything's free, and it isn't really. But on the other hand, you need if you want the publicity, then you have to put the stuff out there, and it's just the risk you take, really.
Wow, I never would have thought of putting my own name in a hashtag, but that's really useful, isn't it? Any other tips?
Well, I don't know if it's a tip or not, really, but it's a bit unusual that someone actually started adopting it as well. And it's just people are kind there. In a way, it's really kind. I saw it as a positive, unusual positive, but a positive.
Yeah. Are there any, you've highlighted a couple of downsides there of using Instagram. Are there any other downsides or any pitfalls people should be aware of?
Oh, Really, not directly, other than what you mentioned earlier about the holiday business. But the same applies to most social media. I mean, I actually recently did a trip to Japan, and I actually blitzed Instagram with my photos from Japan while I was doing it. But I did that knowing that my house was occupied while I was away.
Well, do you know what I'm really tempted to do? I'm really
Yeah.
tempted to put up a green screen and photograph myself and put in like the Leaning Tower of Pizza behind me,
Yeah.
and just put it on Facebook and Instagram. Look at
Yeah.
me, and see if anyone even cares that I'm away, or if anyone can tell the difference between
Yeah.
my faking it and actually going there. I'd have to do
Yeah.
it, make it look like it was a tourist photo, but yeah, that's something I've often thought of doing. Maybe
Yeah.
one day I will. What I've sort of picked up on from our discussion today is anything commercially sensitive, or anything that you really think, a slight reservation about putting that out, or I want that to stay unique, I don't
Right.
want people to copy it. Don't put it on Instagram, is what I've picked up. Only if it's anything that you're doing for someone else, maybe don't put it on. If it's a little bit something from a commercial shoot or something else,
Exactly.
or something you don't want going round and round around the internet, leave it, is
Yeah.
what I'm picking up on.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of other things that probably I wouldn't put up there. Anything that's really personal.
Nothing for family.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same thing on Instagram and Facebook. I rarely put anything to do with my family up there. It seems a bit odd when people talk to me about, well, it'd be nice to see pictures of your family on Facebook or Instagram. I said, well, no. I'm sorry. I see my family, in person. There's no point in sharing that with everyone all the time. It's just, to me, it's too personal. You give too much to the world. And I think that one is, for me, I mean, everyone's different. I know a lot of people just only post family stuff, but for me, it isn't. It's more about the photography.
My personal Facebook page, I do put a lot of stuff up about my family, because we have family that we never see, in some cases sadly, and in some cases not sadly. So I put up pictures so that they can sort of see what we're doing, see my children sort of develop. But I only have 28 friends on Facebook, so it's quite a limited pool anyway.
Okay.
I don't have a public thing. I don't have people following me. So I do, but I would never, if I had a very public Facebook, it would only be about the work, I think, rather than family or anything else.
I'll clarify that point, because when I opened my Facebook, I wasn't really interested in the concept of having it as a family or personal account, really. It started because of my photography, and then eventually evolved into me having to have the account, because to me Facebook was necessary evil. I wasn't really very keen on it, but when I started photographing models were tagging or wanting to tag me, so I found myself having to open accounts on all sorts of things. I've even got one on Snapchat. I don't even know how to use it. I've got Twitter, I've got Facebook, I've got Instagram. I had to go onto those sites so that I at least could get the tag. It seems a bit odd, but at least then it's a form of recognition that I actually was involved in creating that photo. So Facebook is more, for me, it's more of to do with the art and the photography. Yes, there are sillies on there, when I've been away on trips and done stuff, but there's not really anything too personal on there.
So for you, social media, and Instagram, will include in social media, is more about you shouting, look, I made this, rather than letting someone shout, look what I've done, look what I've done. It's you saying, I've done this too. Is that right? Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, yes, you kind of are reading it correctly, but it's not quite as arrogant or egotistical as that.
I would never sort of imply it was, but
no, I didn't. But I didn't say you were. It's just it could. But it is. It's kind of. It's like the best way to put it is it's like a shop front.
Yes, yeah.
Because I am semi-professional, and for me, it's a shop front. It's sort of a way of selling my wares. So it's kind of what I use it for. I actually do have my own page as well as my own personal account on Facebook. And to be honest, there's not much difference between. There's a few more sillies and jokes on my personal one, but generally it's all to do with the photography.
And have those tools built a good reputation for you?
Yeah, I think so. They seem to be picking up.
Good. And are there a way do people connect with you via those accounts and get in touch? Is it good is it like word of mouth?
Yeah, it does seem to. It's not cascade. It sort of It's more word of mouth. It's sort of trickling, but sort of an increased trickle, I would say. This is probably the best way of putting it.
I'd like to talk about consistency.
Okay.
When you use Instagram, in your opinion, of course, do you have to be consistent in how often you post and what type of thing you post?
There is a thing, there's a hashtag InstaDaily that people use. And it's almost like going back to the old Flickr days where, the 365-day project where you took a photo every day and uploaded it. I suppose that is a thing, but for me, it doesn't make much difference. I don't like the restriction in a way. Sometimes I like to be able to post 3 or 4 photos a day, and sometimes I leave it 2 or 3 days between. So I see it as something I do for enjoyment, and as soon as I get sort of a schedule to it, which is effectively what the daily upload thing is, I think it would ruin it for me. But then again.
But you have sort of indicated you are fairly consistent. You don't leave it more than 3 days, do you, between posts?
Sometimes I do, honestly.
4 days?
Yeah, it depends on how enthusiastic I am or how busy I am. Well, enthusiastic with the photography, how busy I am in my other work, and also how out and about I've been generally. If I've been sitting in the house doing accounts and doing my other work, then I don't get much chance to actually produce new photos. So those gaps are what happens. So you have a few days gap.
No, it sounds very much like you're not regimented, like I must put something up today, tomorrow. But it sounds like you do, maybe unwittingly, and you might not have realised this, have a level of consistency in your posting.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. But it's more... it's not necessarily daily.
No.
Yeah.
Do you have a consistency with your image style that you put out on Instagram? Or is it whatever takes your fancy?
I'm laughing because whilst I don't really think I have a style, but people seem to think I do. But everyone has a style, and a style is almost a whole subject for another podcast. Not that I'm putting that forward for you.
I've already taken it up. I've just written that down.
It really
style would be a good episode, I think.
Talk for hours on. You really
can.
For me, I have a different style in my Instagram post than I would do, say, for my model photography.
Let's say I'm going to start my Instagram tomorrow. What sort of advice would you give me?
The first thing I would say is not to be disappointed by the absence of activity to start off with.
That's fine. I've got used to low views on the podcast. My expectations are very low anyway. That's fine.
I'm sure it'll pick up.
I was happy to get into double figures, John. Yeah, and just to be clear, I have got into double figures. Not 3 figures yet, but I have got into double figures. What else would you advise?
When I first started doing the Instagram, I wasn't actually anywhere near as prolific or as into it as I am now. So in a way, what happened was I don't know if this is a recommendation or not, but I just did it. I mean, really very ad hoc. There was like a few weeks between them sometimes. I just posted anything to start off with. I would post the back of a camera shot that I'd taken on a model shoot. It would be anything. But as I evolved, I realised that I could actually just turn it into almost like a travelogue, like a series of photos that actually represented what I'd been doing. And I wanted to do it in an arty way. So I suppose having a vision of where you're heading with it is the point I'm getting at. Because to start off with, I was all over the place, style-wise, upload frequency, what I was using it for. I had no clear vision. So having a vision is probably a good thing. Then again, it can evolve as well, can't it?
Yeah. Right. I think we're gonna draw things to a close there.
Well,
it's flown by, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. We should do it again.
We should do it again, definitely. And talking of doing it again, don't forget to check back on episode 1, which is about the realities of being a professional photographer, where I spoke with Drew. That was very, very interesting. And don't forget to find us on Facebook at the 160th of a second podcast on Facebook. I want to thank John today for taking the time to talk with me about Instagram, giving me some tips and having a really good conversation with him. I want to thank you for listening, and don't forget to check back for future episodes.